Welcome, listeners, to A Writer's Life. I'm your host, Heike Bohm, the author of the novel Secrets in the Shadows. A Writer's Life is a place where I'll be in conversation with fellow writers. We'll discuss all things writing. They'll read from their latest works, and we'll explore what happens beyond the pen in A Writer's Life. It's gonna be a page turner. I just know it. Pull up a chair and join us. I'm recording on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation.
I think what this story was about, and I didn't know that I was doing this when I wrote it, it was about my father who was going through dementia. And so it's about consciousness. In a sense, he was in a sort of a different state of consciousness than we are.
Welcome, listeners, to A Writer's Life. Today, I'm in conversation with Barbara Black, who is an award-winning poet, short fiction, and flash fiction writer. Her short story collection, Music from a Strange Planet, published in May 2021 by Caitlin Press, was also voted 49th Shelf's 2021 Best Book of the Year. Her writing has been published in national and international literary journals and anthologies, including Bath Flash Fiction Volume 5 and 6, Cincinnati Review, Geist, the Hong Kong Review, and Prairie Fire. Achievements include fiction finalists in the 2020 National Magazine Awards, winner of the 2017 Writers Union of Canada Short Prose Competition, and most recently, winner of the Federation of BC Writers Literary Contest 2021 in the Flash Fiction category. She lives, gardens, and motorcycles in Victoria, BC. Welcome, Barbara, to A Writer's Life.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
Where were you born, and what was it like around your dinner table when you were growing up?
I was born in North Vancouver, and specifically in Lynn Valley, which was a lovely little enclave nestled right against the mountains. And it was a great place to grow up because we had all the bush to play in and build forts. And the house that I grew up in was right on the edge of Lynn Canyon. And so I grew up just hearing the rush of the creek and sometimes even the boulders moving around. It was a really wonderful place to be, and a very iconic place that imprinted on me quite a lot. And a lot of people who grow up there as well have that feeling. So that's the story of my birth.
You were born amongst the big trees.
After.
And what was it like around your dinner table growing up?
Well, I was the youngest. I am still the youngest. I have two sisters, and I grew up in a really easygoing, very placid family. My parents were both very good-natured, and there were rarely any voices raised. So in terms of conversation around the table, there were no political, shooting matches or shouting matches or any controversial debates, but we did have differences of opinion, and but nothing confrontational. And the most politics I ever heard from my parents was at election time. My dad would always say, "Just check the box that says NDP." Well, political as he said I was ever going to get. So, but there was always a lot of wit flying around in the room, which is a particular talent of all of my family members. And we were always curious about the reasons for things or the origins of things. And there was always somebody, usually me, because I was closest to the bookcase, jumping up from the table to read an entry from like the Webster's Dictionary. Or we had this giant orange encyclopedia. It was with this hideous orange color that I think we got from installations from the gas station or something, chapter by chapter. And so sometimes that would come out, and one of us would read whatever we were debating about. I do remember my middle sister and I, we were kind of a team, and we looked a lot alike. So we used to pretend we were twins. We were always sharing these like in jokes at the table. And then my father, who hardly ever raised his voice, he would say, "If you're going to horse around, go in the basement." And we would secretly, after he said that, every time we would neigh like horses, right? So that was about the worst trouble we got in. And when we were teenagers, we were a bit worse, but that was pretty laid back.
It was funny. I remember that big, thick orange dictionary in school. That's what we had. I totally remember it. Yeah. What were some of your favorite books that you loved when you were a teenager?
Oh boy. I do distinctly remember really loving Charlotte's Web when I was young, because it had animals in it and a spider. And I love bugs. I loved them and I still like them. And my mother volunteered in the school library, and
Oh,
so she knew a lot about kids' books. And she also knew I was not really girly kind of. I would much rather, climb up a tree or play with bugs or whatever than be doing hairdresser or playing house. And so I never read Anne of Green Gables or Nancy Drew like my other sisters did, but because I always liked the animal stories or the nature stories. And I like playing outside and sometimes by myself. And so the kind of books that were going to appeal to me were kind of outdoorsy, like Swiss Family Robinson. I love that one. And there was a badger one, about a boy who lived with a badger, kind of like a badger for 2 years. I think it was Incident at Hawk Hill or something like that. I love that one. And which is funny because I have a story in my short story collection that's about a taxidermist who becomes very fond of a porcupine and sort of, oh, it's a little bit of foreshadowing there from my earlier life. The book I really liked when I was a little bit older, again, was Harriet the Spy, because she roamed around taking notes and observing people. And it was kind of like a spy story combined with a story about someone who was probably a budding or was a budding writer. So I really identified with her, and she was not girly either, like me. I do remember she used to write in her journal in class, I think, and that's something that I did in high school, not elementary school. I carried these coiled binders, lined binders with me everywhere. I think I ended up with about 25 of them. And I actually, I would write in class because I'd be bored. So I remember one day the French teacher, Mrs. Harrison, I was, had my head down, I was writing, and suddenly the class was really quiet, and I kind of looked up and went, "Uh-oh." She said, "Barbara, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh," I thought, I just be honest, "I'm writing in my journal." And she said, "Okay, well, can you put it away now?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." And it all worked all right.
so did you know early on that you wanted to be a writer?
I don't know. I never aspired to be a writer. I didn't have dreams of being having fantasizing a career as an author or anything like that. But I did always write. And oddly, almost every single job I had in my life was writing, whether it was freelance writing or journalism. I always was good at writing, so I didn't think of it as a talent. I was just something that I did. Um, so it wasn't until, so we did writing jobs all through my life. And then just the last couple, 6 or 7 years, I decided to do creative writing. I started with poetry, which I still find the hardest thing to write. And then I went to short fiction or short stories. And right now, I'm doing flash fiction quite a lot too. It doesn't pay as well as freelance writing, but it's not bad. So,
On your webpage, I was reading that you actually do quite a lot of different kinds of art. And so what inspired that? Where did you get that love from? Basically what, where, and who introduced you into the world of arts?
Do you mean visual arts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the arts, because it seems like you kind of
Oh,
tackle a whole gamut of different mediums. And I relate to it because I do the same thing.
oh, do you? Oh, good. Okay. Well, maybe you'll understand then. I'm. I think I kind of call myself a serial artist,
I love that.
not to be confused with a serial killer. Serial artist, and because I tend to go into projects and or something I want to learn, and then I do it for a while, and then I often will move on to another thing. So, for example, I studied classical music for quite a while and classical voice. And then I sang as a soloist. And then I kind of got tired of oratorios. And then I decided to be in jazz. And I'm often self-taught too. I kind of just take something on and I'm an autodidact, I guess they call it. So then I did jazz for a while and then I stopped that. And my latest thing right now is on, I don't know if you saw this on Instagram, that I started when I started on Instagram, I'm like, what am I going to do? I
Yeah.
don't have a dog. I don't have cute kids. So I decided to try collage because I'd always wanted to try it for years and I never did anything about it. So I decided to collage my words, mostly poetry, if it was short enough, or it would be excerpts from a poem or excerpts from a flash fiction. And I just basically taught myself how to do it as I did it. And it was really fun. It's so spontaneous.
Mhm.
And it's a way to show my work without people having to read a lot either. They get a visual instead and a little sort of glimpse of something. And so I'm always surprised when I sit down. I know what words I want to do, but I don't know exactly what the collage is going to be. I go through my stuff and all my magazines and quirky cuttings, and something starts it, and then away we go. And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing. Okay.
So was there a particular person in your life that introduced you into the arts? Like, how did you get interested? Like, I know for me, very early on, I took a pottery course, and I think I must have been like 6 or something, went to a community center. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I love the arts. And then I met a family friend who's repaired artwork. And being in his studio, I saw all these paintbrushes and uh, broken china that was like really expensive and beautiful gold artwork on the walls, like in golden frames. And I just felt at home. It was just like this sense of knowing. And I thought, this is where I belong. But my family was like, my mom and dad were completely different. They were carving out a life distance to live. So that wasn't literature, or any of that wasn't in my life growing up as a kid. But I could feel and know when I saw it that, oh, that's something I love. So was there something like that that happened for you?
Well, in terms of reading, my parents were both pretty prolific readers. Not of the kind of literary stuff. My dad was pure nonfiction, and my mom was purely fiction. They always did encourage, going to the library and things like that. But for music would have been the main thing that my mother especially encouraged in me, because my older sister, she studied piano when she was fairly young, and I started when I was 9, and I loved it. And she, again, knowing me really well, said, well, would you want lessons? And I said yes. And she said, do you want to do the Royal Conservatory? And I said no. She said, I only ever want you to enjoy it, so I don't want you to be forced to do exams and stuff. And so I just got to learn for my pleasure, and it was great. And I started sometimes composing, did a few little compositions when I was a teenager. I didn't know how to compose. Later on, I decided that one of my serial artist endeavors was to compose, because I'd been studying art song. I composed my own art song accompaniments to my poetry and other people's poetry. And just, I've always loved art. I don't really have art in my family. So, like, my mom was very good, but she didn't get a lot of the stuff I did in art and theater too. She put me in theater too with my middle sister. And she wasn't really an arts person. It wasn't her thing, but she did try to understand me and encourage it in me, which I'm really thankful for. And then later in life, I just went in. I just love all arts because I feel like they feed back into my writing too. Going to a dance performance, like modern dance, I can be sitting there and get ideas from I don't know, the forms or the music or the movements. So I just love all of the arts. I'm crazy. I don't do them all. I don't do dance. Uh, Not very well, anyway.
Yet. You don't do it yet. I got introduced to Buto dancing.
Oh, what is that? I don't know.
It's like a Japanese art form of dancing, and how I kind of interpret it is they dance from the inside out. So they become the rock, and it's just really, really creative, and it's one of my favorite things. And I was thought, ooh, I'd like to become one of those dancers. Anyways, who knows? You might get inspired.
That's fascinating. You'll have to send me a link to that so I can try it out.
I will. They were the ones that, I think it was in Seattle, I'm not sure, but where they were all covered in white and wrapped up, and they hung themselves from buildings.
I remember
and
that.
That's like the Buto dancers. So it's all very, very different, and it's fascinating. I just love it. So performances on it, and it was just really inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
In your bio, I also read that you had 12 years of voice training. Can you talk about that? It's fascinating, actually, to me, voice training.
Oh, okay. When I was in my 30s, I don't know how I got the notion. I just started to feel like I wanted to learn how to sing properly. I'd always been in choirs and things, and I might even have seen an ad. I worked at the newspaper at the time, so maybe I saw an ad for the vocal teacher I ended up with, a very passionate Russian lady. And I started studying it, and I just loved it. I loved art song because the art song uses really nice poetry, famous classical poets. And I loved opera. She was really into opera, and she had me performing in Hansel and Gretel, the opera. And I was Hansel, which is traditional for a mezzo, plays Hansel. And I just kept at it. And then I thought, maybe I want to go into this. And I thought I might want to audition at a university. I ended up deciding not to do that. And then I was in North Van at the time and moved to Victoria. And when that happened, I met people at the conservatory who were also studying, who were in the opera chorus, the Victoria opera chorus. And I got in it, and I had a fantastic time singing in the chorus and acting and wearing crazy costumes, and always having to make my hair have a black wig on top because my hair stuck out because I was blonde. And it was just a great group of people. It was a very, very enjoyable part of my life. But I miss it terribly. And many of my friends are all ex-opera chorus people who aren't doing it anymore, but they still sing in other ways. So I did have a quasi career after the opera chorus, in that I was singing with small orchestras or ensembles, and I was doing a lot of oratorio, which is generally is religious. You think of Bach or Handel, and I was a soloist, the mezzo or the alto soloist in that. And I loved the music, but I didn't always match up my beliefs with the beliefs in the text, and I started struggling with that. And I ultimately left it after about maybe 4 years. But the discipline was really nice. And then I went to jazz, which is like that can still be disciplined, but you can sing much freer, right? You can change the key and you can change a lot of things about the music, which you would never be doing in classical music.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because of all the different kinds of exercises, how to really use your voice. Like one of the things is I want to do an audiobook of my novel. And I thought, oh, maybe some voice lessons would be really good. But then I thought, what are actually what do they actually make you do to improve your voice?
Well, what you learn is it's a very physical experience, and there are like physical skills that you have to learn, and most of it is using your diaphragm to sustain your breath and posture, and also where your head is, sticking your neck out, and breathing is just big because you want to be singing out on the breath, not pushing and damaging your vocal apparatus, as they say. It's funny that you mentioned the reading, because I used to go to the Planet Earth Poetry in Victoria and read my poetry sometimes. And I always practiced my poems before I went like it was a song. And I even marked it up, breathe here, shorten this line, or all these kind of notations. And then I would read, and people always said to me, "You read so well." I would say, that's because I practice and I have vocal training. So I knew how to project my voice too. Some people are very shy or they just never use a microphone. So learning a little bit of vocal support would be helpful for audio reading, or just mapping out what you're reading and seeing, especially things you're going to stumble on, that you have to practice that. Or if it's your own writing, you change the line because it's a stumble line. You realize, what? That's really awkward. I think I'll just rewrite that.
Do you teach vocal?
No, I don't. No. They always used to think I was a voice teacher when I went in Long and McQuaid to buy vocal books and piano books. They said, "You're a teacher, right?" Because they wanted to give me a discount. I go, no, I'm not. You ask me that every time, but it's okay.
So music is a big part of your life. How does music play into your writing?
Interesting question. I have a lot of people say to me, not just in my poetry, but in my other writing, that it's really musical. And then sometimes people even say, "Are you, musically trained?" I said, "Well, yes, I am." There's another way that music plays into my writing, and that is when I write flash fiction and occasionally poetry, but mostly flash fiction. I've often written pieces while I'm listening to music. And the music helps set up a structure for that short little flash fiction that's going to be probably quite mystical or surreal. So that's another way it comes into my writing work. And then a third way is that in my latter years, my recent years, I have become a librettist.
What's that?
The person who writes the words for musical pieces. So Gershwin had his lyricist, George was the composer, and Ira was the lyricist. I believe that's right. So I have worked with composers, mostly in art song, which is the classical genre, providing words to pieces. I've also worked with a composer writing a text based on the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Oh, wow.
That he then set to words, did a vocal line for a fantastic American baritone who recorded some of it. And right now I have two things happening. I have a composer in Vancouver, Katerina Guimond. She is an up-and-coming, very good, she does a lot of choral compositions and a lot of commissions. And she's wanting to move into opera and chamber opera. So I've already written the text and she's setting my text. It's a comic chamber opera based on one of my flash fiction stories.
Wonderful.
It's about a Victorian woman, a woman in Victorian times, who is being punished for being too intelligent. There's all sorts of
Doesn't that still happen?
Yeah, I know. It just speaks to modern times, doesn't it? And I have another ongoing project as a librettist. I just finished the first draft, which was 20 drafts actually, of text for a piece called Seven Colors of the Night. This time we did it the other way around. We did it, my composer is Italian. He lives in Amsterdam, and he already composed the music. And so I had to compose the words to the music, something I found extremely challenging compared to the other way around. So he's just having a look at it and seeing, he likes a lot of what I did, and there may be other spots that we're gonna negotiate, because it is a collaboration. And it's great because I'm not doing a lot of music myself right now, but that gives me an in to the musical world. And the composers like that I can understand the scores. I can play them if it's piano, and I can read them. That's a boon, to them, to have a librettist who does understand the music.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Puppetry. Where did that love grow from? It's
good.
I love puppetry.
Well, I do too. I even I've done 2 workshops. I've never been a practicing puppeteer. But I did a fabulous workshop at the Banff Center quite a few years ago with the Old Trout Puppet Workshop. Do you know them? They're based in Calgary.
No.
They're very, very creative and very quirky. And I had a great time there. It was a 2-week workshop. We were put into groups, and each group, there was about 5 of us. We had to put together 2 or 3 separate puppet shows. And the puppets were not speaking hand puppets. They were marionettes. And they used, I really liked this. They use background, ambient, interesting music as the sort of envelope in which the action takes place. And there's no speech from the puppets, but you know what's going on.
Wow.
And so, again, because I love music so much, I liked that idea. I don't really like, talking puppets, unless when I was a kid. So that was fantastic. The shows that we produced in the end were just magical, each group. And we also made puppets. And this is a kind of cute little side story. I had never really made a puppet before, other than, out of a paper bag.
Yeah.
And so I did a plasticine head form, and I did paper mache around it. And as I was making it, I thought, oh, this looks kind of like a court jester or a fool, right? And he had quite a long nose and these sort of like really red laughing lips. And I painted his face, and someone helped me to make hands that would be like marionette hands with strings on them, so he could gesture. And everyone loved the puppet. He was very, very, very goofy looking. And I found a beautiful at the Banff Center, the Banff City, the town down below. We went down there to the thrift store to buy stuff for our puppets. And I found a incredible red corduroy, like royal red, rich red jacket. It was a kid's jacket, like a baby's corduroy jacket, and it was perfect. So I put it on him. And then I found a burgundy scarf with this beautiful sort of gold stitching and wrapped that around him. And he looked very court-like. So I noticed at some point that my puppet looked a lot like my dad, of whom I was and am very fond. I thought, no, maybe not. And of course, I brought my puppet home, and my partner goes, "That looks like your dad." I said, "Oh, really?" And he goes, "Yeah, it does." And so I named him, my dad's name was James, so I named him Jacobus Ridiculous. And then my sister came over not far after that and looked at him and goes, "That looks like Dad." So I made a puppet that looks like my dad. I also took a course in Italy, a mask course, which was fascinating. It was just so different. We made masks, and we did a lot of movement, getting into the mood of our mask. I found it a little bit challenging because the instructor I didn't really connect with. Most of us didn't. So it didn't work out too well, but I'm fascinated by making masks. And I have a few masks in the house that I've made. I have a wolf mask and a devil mask that I've made just on my own paper mache. So maybe I'll get to that career when I'm 90.
Awesome. What was the first piece of writing you had published and with whom? And what did that feel like when you
Do you mean ever? Like
ever your first piece?
the very first. Okay. That I think that would have been the tribute poem that I wrote about our high school principal, Mr. McEwen.
Did you make a puppet of him too?
He would have made a great puppet. He was quite a character. He was leaving the school to be a superintendent, and I wrote this poem. It was published in the local newspaper, which I think at the time was called The Citizen, and I didn't even know. Someone just went, "Oh, did you know? Oh, I saw your poem." I went, "What?" And there it was in the Citizen, and my name. No, Barbara Black wrote this. And he was a man, he was really dearly loved by all the students and respected by greasers and non-greasers alike. And we had a lot of greasers in our school. And we all called him Muggsy. That was his, and it was very affectionate. It wasn't, mocking him. And I even got that word Muggsy at the very end. Mr. McEwen, Muggsy, sir, were the last few words. But I'm kind of horrified now that I actually mentioned his rubbing knees in the poem, because he was quite short and quite portly. And so when he walked, but everyone loved that line. So now I think I would never have done that, but people liked it. And I read it at the end of the year assembly in front of the staff and the students. So I guess that was my first. I didn't get paid, but it was published in the newspaper.
Nice. Would you read an excerpt from your book of short story collection, Music from a Strange Planet?
I'm going to read the first story in the book, and it's called Mastering Surface Tension. And it is about a man who has a head injury and with some rather interesting consequences. It has a very interesting tone in it. It's serious about his head injury, but there's also humor in it as well. And people seem to enjoy that. So I will read, maybe not all of it, but a good section of it for you right now.
Lovely.
Okay. Mastering Surface Tension. Bert always wanted a cigarette right when something interesting was happening, like he could only accommodate change on his own terms. It irritated the hell out of Grace. "Look, forked lightning," she'd say. And then, instead of looking, he'd reach for his cigs, pop one out, light it, then look. One June day, Bert climbed the ladder leading to the roof of the house. He had done it many times before, thanks to the exhortations of his loving wife to, for God's sake, do something about the cracked window pane, the Christmas lights, the leak, the loose shingle. Usually the supposed defect was a figment of her imagination, which saw decrepitude and disaster lurking in everything. In this case, it was a football-sized hornet nest hanging from the corner of the roof. He lined up the ladder underneath it and climbed to take a look. He liked to at least give the appearance he had done an inspection. The nest appeared inactive. He lit up a cigarette at the top of the ladder and took the opportunity to look into his neighbors' yards. There was Mr. Gorman, whose first name and profession were a mystery to Bert, and whose yard was soulless perfection. Manicured lawn, tightly clipped box hedge, expensive lounges arranged at right angles. It looked like a high-end miniature train set. All it needed was people. But Gorman never entertained anyone in his backyard. He only controlled its growth and staged its possibilities. On the other side was the perma-smile guy, Ed Thompson, who whistled in his garden, mostly vegetables, and was perennially cheerful, as if every day were a pleasant and welcome surprise. His yard was populated with water features, Buddha statues, tiki lights, and grandchildren. In the summer, his barbecue went nonstop, its primordial charred meat fumes billowing into Bert's domain. Bert was neither precise nor freeform. He was the common man between these two extremes. "You're a good man, Bert, a regular good man," his wife always told him, and his yard was just a plain rectangle of grass. Bert watched Gorman mowing his impeccable lawn, back and forth, first in double wide stripes, then diagonally in a diamond pattern. It looked like something Bert would never achieve in his life. He sucked on his cigarette and exhaled a stream of smoke in the direction of the hornet nest. In the other yard, Ed was picking his tomatoes in that luxuriating Buddha way of his, admiring each red globe as a miracle of nature, when his cell phone rang. Oddly, at the same time, Bert heard his wife's voice coming from the kitchen. "Oh, I was up to my neck in blackberries, pie, jam, you name it." When she laughed, Ed laughed too. Bert thought it must have been a weird coincidence. He moved up to the ladder's platform with the label that said, "Not a step," trying to spot his wife through the narrow window. His head was now 6 inches from the nest. A sentry popped out of the entrance, its helmet-like black and white head swiveling to face Bert. It sent out the alarm. The last thing Bert remembered was lying on his back on the sidewalk and seeing a squadron of bald-faced hornets dive-bombing his forehead. Since then, Bert had been in a so-called vegetative state. By all appearances, he was inert, confined to a stark white hospital room on the 5th floor of St. Francis of Assisi Medical Center. But in fact, due to a neural short circuit in his visual cortex, he was now an insect who roamed a microscopic world of his own creation, a landscape that sometimes resembled a magnified stucco wall or a dried, warped orange peel. Technically, he didn't operate as his human self anymore. But on the other hand, he was free from the constraints of the material world.
Nicely done. What inspired some of your stories?
Well, interestingly enough, the one I just read, I did have a hornet nest in my yard that year. So that was in there. Didn't knock it down though, because I really like all insects. So I left it there. And I think what this story was about, and I didn't know that I was doing this when I wrote it, it was about my father who was going through dementia. And so it's about consciousness in a sense. He was in a sort of a different state of consciousness than we are at the moment. But I think when I finished my collection, I realized that was probably what I was processing. And the story came up. My dad had a very good sense of humor, so he probably would have liked the story. But I think I was exploring that when you're in a different world, and which he was, and you understand what's going on in your world, and you can't really communicate with the people around you anymore. It's a very sad thing in real life, although my dad was really quite funny, even with his dementia. He was adored by all the caregivers in the care home. So also what this story has in it is insects. And that is a running theme through the book. I've got cicadas in there and various other insects, moths, because I've always liked insects and I like the microscopic world. And even as a child, I would play just watching bugs and sort of project myself into their world, into their consciousness. What do they see? How is it different than what we see? Or that interested me even back as a child. So that is definitely a theme that I had in my mind. Bert was one of the first stories I wrote. And so that was in my mind as I was writing. Both the consciousness thing and the insect theme. In the Night People, that was actually the very first story I wrote about the two unusual, the dentist and acrobat insomniacs who find each other. That one's kind of about consciousness too, when you think of it, because they are insomniacs, so they exist in a kind of a bubble world where they're doing things when everyone else is asleep. They are awake. So I see that running through a couple of other stories as well.
Interesting. I love hearing what inspires people in them and then where you go with that. And I find as a writer, you're always putting yourself in everything, your life experiences.
That's right. You don't even know you're doing it sometimes. And
yeah,
when I look back at some stories, I'm that's interesting how that got in there. Sometimes it was intentional, and I did know the story about the girl who is essentially me, the kind of solitary girl. And there's a man that moves into the shack in near next door to them, and he also has a head injury. So there was that thing again. But I knew that I was writing that story about that particular issue in that case. Other times, not so much, but there's a lot of mother and child stuff in this collection that reflects something I was experiencing when I wrote it, and I didn't know I put that in there either. Just because I didn't have children, and I had a great life, and I always thought I was just fine with it, and I was, but some part of my body had this phase where my body was in mourning that I didn't have children. It shocked me. I never expected to feel that. And you will see that longing and somewhat grief in several stories in the book.
Writing really is a form of therapy, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's a working out of things, maybe in different characters or different settings or slightly different setups, but you can see a thread in there of things you've been working through at the time you write, but also things from a long time ago sometimes weave themselves in between the words.
Definitely. What are you working on now? You had touched a bit on about with music, but what about writing like other stories, or are you working on a new book?
I am working on, I have about a 2/3 finished manuscript of flash fiction, which I love writing. They're all, it'll be coming out. It's actually got a contract already, and I'm allowed to say that. And it'll be coming out, if things all go well and I'm inspired in how I'm going to finish it, it'll come out in 2023.
Nice.
And these are all really very short, 500 words. A lot of them are just 200 words. A couple of them are 1,000, but generally in the sort of 250 to 500 word range. The super concentrated pieces. Sometimes they're a bit surreal. I really like the challenge of condensing a story into very short space. And I really like using really distinct language that becomes part of the structure of the story. Not every story is like that, but for example, I have one where I used a sort of rhetorical device where I had opposites all the way through it. Like I had coming and going and paddling forward and paddling backwards and all these opposites. Not too many. Like I don't think readers would even really quite notice it, but I use that as a sort of architecture in the story. So I have a lot of fun writing these.
Well, and that would kind of build a form of tension too, which is nice because then you feel it more.
Yeah.
What words do you have for anyone wanting to get into the arts?
Well, you just got to jump in, is my point of view. You don't have to practice them even at all if you don't want, but just go to concerts, read a lot of books, go to dance performances, poetry readings, and it just will enrich your life so much. I can't not even imagine living without the arts. I don't know, I would just shrivel up and die if I didn't have all of that feeding into my life constantly. Visual arts. And another thing I love to do with arts is when I travel, I love going to art galleries, whether they're new ones or, the Louvre, and local, just seeing local artists. And even I love gardening, and I love looking at beautiful gardens in the world. And I've seen a few of them that are just stunning, especially the ones that are designed by people who are very unique, like the Jardin, I can't remember the second word, the Madrigal, the one in Morocco that used to be Saint Laurent's garden. Now someone else designs it, and these are just like, they have the fingerprint of the artist is on the garden. It's so unique. Another one that's just crazy good is in California, in Santa Barbara, is Lotus Land, designed by a very quirky ex-opera singer woman who was, I think, had about 5 husbands, and collected plants from all over the world. It's a very quirky garden. It's not for everybody, but for me, it's for me, idiosyncratic, and it's art. Even though it's a garden, it's art. So don't even think art is only just painting or singing. Art can be in many things that you're not aware of even, but in things that you wouldn't normally say, oh, plants are art. Yes, they are, when they're done with a designer's eye.
Nice. What fun conversation. Thank you, Barbara, for being on A Writer's Life.
Oh, thank you so much, Heidi. It was very enjoyable. It's so nice to talk to you.
That was Barbara Black. If you would like to know more about her and where to purchase her book, Music from a Strange Planet, please check the links below. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to A Writer's Life? And if you want more information about myself and my novel Secrets in the Shadows, visit my website at www.heigebohm.ca. For a kinder world, take care of each other.
I just forgot what the question was. We're going to have to...
The question was...